Michigan, calm on the surface, but darkness runs deep. A body sealed in a burning trunk in a blueberry field. A butcher's home reduced to ash under midnight flames. A dad gasping beneath chemical burns that melted his flesh. And a lover's remains scattered across the woods after a fatal betrayal. Decades behind bars await them, bind the demons behind the bars of justice forever. And this is Inside Michigan's most dangerous female killers, shocking murders, and true crime documentary. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Nyra Antinique Whitelow. On a day meant for bargains and celebration, one reckless decision on a Michigan highway turned Black Friday into a tragedy no one could forget. Nyra Antinique Whitelow, a 23-year-old woman from Grand Rapids, was behind the wheel of a Dodge Charger on the 24th of November 2023. The posted speed limit along Stadium Drive in Kalamazoo was 45 miles per hour. But investigators later revealed that Whitelow's car was moving at nearly twice that speed, a chilling 97 miles per hour, moments before impact. According to police records, Whitelow told officers she was running late to drop off items to a friend at Bronson Hospital. But what followed was irreversible. Her Dodge Charger slammed into a Subaru Crosstrek carrying 22-year-old Audrey Hensley, a Michigan State University graduate pursuing her master's degree at Ball State University, and her boyfriend, Gavin Vinstra. The impact was so violent that it turned the Subaru into twisted metal, sending debris scattering across the road and striking a third vehicle. Audrey was rushed to Bronson Methodist Hospital but was pronounced dead soon after arrival. Her beloved dog, Molly, was also killed. Gavin Vinstra survived but suffered devastating injuries, including multiple fractures that required extensive surgeries. Detective Tim Knight from the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety led the investigation. Using the Charger's data recorder, he established that Whitelow's speed reached 97 miles per hour just seconds before the collision and only slowed to 86 miles per hour at impact. This wasn't an accident, the detective noted in court filings. It was extreme recklessness, disregarding the safety of everyone else on the road. Prosecutor getting filed second-degree murder charges, a rare move for a traffic-related case, explaining that Whitelow's conduct was so dangerous that the natural tendency was to cause severe injury or death. In addition, she was charged with reckless driving causing serious impairment. Whitelow was arraigned on the 25th of March 2024 and released on a $50,000 bond. Court hearings were scheduled through April and May, but as of now, her legal proceedings remain pending. The community's grief was overwhelming. Audrey's mother recalled that they had shared a wonderful Thanksgiving together, just hours before the crash took her daughter's life. Local residents, shaken by the tragedy, left flowers and handwritten notes along Stadium Drive, calling for tougher penalties for reckless driving. As news spread, the case ignited national debate over speed culture, a growing trend of young drivers filming themselves racing on public roads. One person's rush can destroy countless lives, one commentator wrote. This case highlights several lessons. Always respect speed limits, because behind every mile per hour lies a margin between life and death. Never assume control means safety. Overconfidence turns vehicles into weapons. And remember, distraction, arrogance, and haste are the three silent killers behind the wheel. Justice moves slowly, but memory is swift. The road where Audrey died remains a reminder that every choice behind the wheel can decide who lives to see another day. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press hype, stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2. Kelly Cochran. Behind a quiet Midwestern marriage hid one of dark murder pacts, a promise sealed in blood, broken by betrayal, and uncovered through relentless investigation. Kelly Marie Cochran, born in Michigan and living between Iron River and Hobart, Indiana, was once described as ordinary. But behind closed doors, she and her husband, Jason Cochran, had made a pact on their wedding night. If one of them ever had an affair, the other would kill the lover. That twisted agreement would later ignite 2 murders and a mystery that spanned multiple states. In October 2014, Kelly began an affair with Christopher Regan, a 53-year-old Air Force veteran and co-worker. When Jason discovered it, the pact came due. Kelly lured Regan to their home under the guise of a romantic visit. As he entered, Jason lay waiting with a gun. A single shot ended Regan's life. Together, the couple dismembered his body and scattered the remains across Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Months later, investigators found fragments of bone and Reagan's glasses where Kelly pointed. When questioned by Iron River Police Chief Laura Frizzo, the Cochrans fled to Indiana. The case went cold until February 2016, when Jason Cochran was found dead at home. At first, it appeared to be a heroin overdose. But Detective Jeremy Ogden noticed something off. A full autopsy revealed Jason had been asphyxiated. Kelly later confessed she had injected him with heroin and smothered him, claiming it was taking too long. Her motive was vengeance. Jason had taken away the only man she ever loved. What began as a missing person case quickly turned into one of the most disturbing double murders in modern U.S. crime history. Kelly's confessions shifted repeatedly, and at times, she hinted at a far darker past. To detectives, she allegedly claimed to have killed as many as 21 people. Whether true or manipulative, those words cemented her image in headlines as the Devil Woman. In 2017, a Michigan jury found Kelly guilty of first-degree premeditated murder for Reagan's death. She showed no emotion as the verdict was read. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without parole. Later, in Indiana, she pleaded guilty to killing her husband and received an additional 65 years. The Lake County judge told her bluntly, "You are the monster here." The community was horrified. Friends of Christopher Reagan recalled the shock of seeing Kelly smile in court, calling it the devil looking back. Neighbors were haunted by rumors that she may have served human flesh at a barbecue shortly after Reagan disappeared. Though investigators found no proof, the horror of that suspicion still lingers. From this chilling story, 3 truths emerge. Trust can disguise danger. Obsession destroys more than it consumes, and those who believe they control death often fall to it. The Cochran secret pact reminds us that evil often wears an ordinary face. Even in silence, justice remembers, and in every small town, the shadows of what's hidden may outlive the people who cast them. Number 3. Mandy Benn. It began on a summer morning meant for hope and charity, when a community riot turned into a scene of devastation that Michigan will never forget. Mandy Marie Benn, a 43-year-old woman from Ionia, Michigan, was driving her car northbound on Stage Road on the 30th of July 2022. At that same moment, dozens of cyclists were participating in the Wish a Mile bicycle tour, a 300-mile charity event supporting the Make a Wish Foundation. Among them were Edward Erickson, a 48-year-old father from Ann Arbor, and 57-year-old attorney Michael Salhaney from Bloomfield Hills, men who rode to raise money for dying children. According to investigators, Benn was under the influence of a cocktail of narcotics, painkillers and lorazepam, when she drove behind a UPS truck. As the truck slowed to stop, Benn crossed the center line to pass it, directly into the cyclist's lane. There was no obstruction ahead, no braking, no evasive action. Her vehicle plowed through the group, striking 5 riders. Erickson and Salhaney died instantly. 3 others were critically injured. The Wish a Mile tour ended that morning in chaos and grief. Deputies who arrived at the scene described Benn as incoherent, slurring her words, her eyes glassy. At the hospital, blood tests confirmed the presence of multiple controlled substances, none prescribed. Investigators later uncovered a prior conviction for driving under the influence in 2017, showing a disturbing pattern. The Ionia County prosecutor charged Benn with 15 counts, including 2 counts of second-degree murder and 3 counts of possessing prescription drugs illegally. She pleaded not guilty, insisting the crash was a horrific accident. But prosecutors argued otherwise, that Benn made a series of intentional decisions to drive while impaired. Her trial began in October 2023. After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict, guilty on all counts. When Benn entered the courtroom for sentencing, her expression was cold, her eyes fixed on the floor. Judge Ronald Schaefer addressed her sternly, "You call this an accident? I call it an act of innate disregard for human life." He imposed a rare consecutive sentence, 2 terms of 35 to 60 years, a minimum of 70, and a maximum of 120 years in prison. At 44 years old, Benn would never walk free again. Victims' families filled the courtroom. "My father was murdered while riding to help children with cancer," said Jacob Salhaney. His brother, Joshua, thanked the judge for bringing a small measure of closure. Survivor Timothy Kolanowski described reliving the crash thousands of times, a sound he can never unhear. Tragedy often leaves behind 3 lessons too vital to ignore. Never trust your reflexes over reason. Even a short drive impaired can become a life sentence. Never underestimate prescription drugs. Legality doesn't equal safety. And never call preventable death an accident. Words can wound justice as deeply as actions. The image of crushed bicycles on an empty Michigan road stands as a silent warning. One reckless choice can end 1,000 good intentions. Number 4. Beverly McCallum. In 2002, a locked metal trunk smoldering in a Michigan blueberry field revealed a secret so disturbing that it would take more than 2 decades to uncover the truth. The victim was 37-year-old Robert Caraballo, a husband, father, and ex-federal inmate who had just re-entered society. The killer was his own wife, Beverly Ann McCallum, a woman whose double life of drugs, crime, and deception ended in one of Michigan's most haunting cold cases, the Jack in the Box murder. 1. According to investigators, the killing took place in the basement of their Charlotte home in early May 2002. Testimony later revealed that McCallum pushed her husband down the stairs before she and her daughter, Deneen Ducharme, along with family friend Christopher McMillan, attacked him. McMillan testified that McCallum struck Caraballo so hard with a hammer that it lodged in his skull. When he was still gasping for air, she placed a plastic bag over his head to finish the job. The group then stuffed his body into a metal footlocker, loaded it into a van, and drove 90 miles to Ottawa County. There, in a blueberry field, they set the trunk ablaze. McCallum removed her husband's wedding ring, loosening it with saliva before pocketing it, and within weeks fled the country. She relocated to Jamaica and later Pakistan, living under multiple aliases. For 13 years, Caraballo's remains lay unidentified, the case growing colder with each passing year. The breakthrough came in 2015, when McCallum's own daughter Deneen contacted detectives by email, confessing she believed her mother had killed Robert. DNA testing confirmed the remains were his. McMillan, who later became the state's key witness, admitted his role and detailed the crime scene. Detectives traced McCallum's flight path across continents and found she had used as many as 6 false identities. On the 13th of February 2020, McCallum was finally arrested in Italy after Interpol flagged her hotel check-in. She was extradited to Michigan 2 years later under an agreement with Italian authorities that she would face second-degree, not first-degree, murder charges, a condition of extradition. In 2024, she stood trial in Eaton County. Now, 63, she appeared frail, seated in a wheelchair, but remained defiant. She denied every allegation and tried to shift blame to her daughter. The jury took less than 2 hours to convict her of second-degree murder and dismemberment of a corpse. Judge Douglas Lloyd sentenced 40 to 60 years in prison. Robert's daughter, Cicely Caraballo, faced her father's killer in court, saying, "His legacy will live on through us. Yours ends with you, Beverly." The judge noted her chilling lack of remorse, particularly the moment she leaned forward during trial to stare closely at her husband's autopsy photos. From this case arise stark warnings. Evil often hides in ordinary homes. Silence from loved ones can cost decades of justice. And no distance, no disguise, can outlast the reach of truth. Justice delayed is not justice denied, it is simply the echo that never stops chasing the guilty. Number 5. Shanda Vander Ark. It began inside a quiet Michigan home where no one imagined that horror could grow behind locked doors and blue tarps. Shanda Marie Vander Ark was a 43-year-old law clerk and mother living in Norton Shores, Michigan. Outwardly, she appeared stable and educated, but investigators later described her as the architect of one of the most disturbing child abuse cases in the state's history. Her 15-year-old son, Timothy Ferguson, a boy with autism and ADHD, was found dead in their home on the 6th of July 2022. He weighed only 69 pounds despite standing nearly 6 feet tall. The medical examiner called it what it was: homicide by starvation, dehydration, and hypothermia. Police discovered a basement turned into a prison cell. A small closet lined with plastic and an Amazon box served as Timothy's bed. The stench of urine and decay filled the air. Cameras and motion sensors had been installed to track his every move. The abuse, prosecutors later proved, had lasted for months, perhaps years. Shanda's older son, 20-year-old Paul Ferguson, told investigators that his mother commanded every act. At her direction, he deprived Timothy of food, fed him bread soaked in hot sauce, called Elijah's extreme regret, and forced him into freezing water baths that sometimes lasted more than 9 hours. Shanda convinced Paul that Timothy was faking it, calling his cries a hunger strike. When the teen finally collapsed, Paul tried to revive him for 18 minutes before calling 911. Timothy's body was found submerged in ice water. Text messages recovered by police revealed chilling coordination between mother and son, messages about punishing Timothy and mocking his suffering. At trial, prosecutors called it a campaign of torture carried out in a home that should have been safe. The case went to trial in December 2023. Paul testified against his mother, admitting his role as the enforcer. Shanda took the stand, denying responsibility and claiming memory loss. At one point, confronted with photographs of Timothy's frail body, she vomited on the witness stand. After barely an hour of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict, guilty of first-degree murder and first-degree child abuse. In January 2024, Judge Matthew Casel sentenced her to life in prison without parole, plus an additional 50 to 100 years for the torture. Calling her actions absolute, systematic, consistent torture, he refused to show Timothy's autopsy photos, saying they resembled a Holocaust victim. Timothy's siblings wept as they addressed the court. His sister Millie demanded the highest punishment, saying, "I want the woman who killed my little brother to face what she deserves." His brother Nolan added, "If I can't have my brother back, she shouldn't have her freedom back." Prosecutor Matt Roberts noted that Shanda never turned toward her children, never acknowledged their pain. From this case, hard truths emerge: evil can disguise itself as intellect, authority can hide cruelty, and blind obedience can make victims of us all. Justice may not restore a lost life, but it reminds us, neglect is not silence, it's complicity. Number 6. Megan Imirowicz. It was her 18th birthday, a night that should have marked adulthood, but instead began a story of violence, regret, and a death that stunned Michigan. Megan Joyce Imirowicz lived with her father, 64-year-old Conrad Imirowicz, in Groveland Township, Oakland County. Their relationship was fractured by years of alcohol abuse and poverty. On the 1st of October 2021, prosecutors said frustration turned deadly. When her father, too intoxicated to drive her to a hair appointment before her birthday party, fell asleep on the couch, Megan snapped. She mixed lye, a corrosive drain cleaner, with water and threw it on him as he slept. The chemical reaction reached temperatures near 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Within seconds, Conrad's skin was burning. Neighbors later found him unconscious. Paramedics described his burns as extensive and catastrophic. At the hospital, doctors amputated both feet and part of a leg. He endured multiple skin grafts, dialysis, and a tracheotomy. After nearly 6 months in a coma, Conrad died in March 2022. Megan initially denied the attack, claiming she had only thrown a piece of bread to wake him. But evidence and witness statements contradicted her. Police found the chemical container in the home, and text messages revealed a tense relationship defined by anger and neglect. Prosecutors called her actions an impulsive burst of rage with irreversible consequences. Charged first with assault, then upgraded to murder after Conrad's death, Megan faced up to life in prison. At trial in June 2023, she wept as jurors heard how her father's final months were spent in agony. Her defense argued she was emotionally immature and overwhelmed by caring for an alcoholic parent. In court, she said, "He was my hero and my best friend. I never wanted this." The jury convicted her of unlawful possession or use of harmful irritants, causing death, a felony under Michigan law, and a misdemeanor domestic violence charge, later dropped during sentencing. Under state guidelines, she faced between 4 and 7 years. But in a controversial decision, Judge Victoria Valentine sentenced her to 1 year in prison with credit for the 506 days she had already served in jail. She walked free that day, placed under 5 years of strict probation, a 9 p.m. curfew, electronic monitoring, and mandatory mental health treatment. Prosecutors voiced disappointment. "This was not the sentence we advocated for," said Chief Assistant Prosecutor David Williams. "It was a tragic case from every angle." Conrad's family, however, pleaded for leniency. Her mother, Julie Conrad, told the court, "She's a child in so many ways, broken, lost, and not ready for adult life." Standing in court, Megan thanked the judge through tears. "I was praying for a miracle today," she said. "And that's what I got." From this case, difficult lessons emerge. Anger unchecked can turn ordinary moments into crimes. Compassion does not erase accountability, and youth cannot shield anyone from consequence. The bond between parent and child is fragile, and once shattered by violence, no cord on earth can piece it back together. Number 7. Marshella Chidester. On a spring afternoon meant for laughter and balloons, a car shattered the walls of celebration, and 2 young lives were gone in an instant. Marshella Chidester, a 67-year-old woman from Newport, Michigan, had once been a respected figure in her community and a former commodore of the Swan Boat Club. But on the 20th of April 2024, she drove her SUV directly into the club during a child's birthday party, killing 8-year-old Alana Phillips and her 4-year-old brother, Zane. 15 others were injured, 9 of them rushed to local hospitals. What was meant to be a day of joy became one of Michigan's most heartbreaking drunk driving tragedies. Investigators later pieced together the hours leading to the crash. Surveillance footage from Chidester's home showed her carrying bottles of wine that morning, filling glasses multiple times before leaving. A clerk testified she purchased alcohol at 9 a.m. Toxicology results confirmed her blood alcohol level was 0.18%, more than twice the legal limit, and she had gabapentin, a prescription drug, in her system. Moments before impact, cameras captured her car, traveling 44 miles per hour. The vehicle plowed through the clubhouse wall, stopping only 25 feet inside. Witnesses said the 2 children were sitting at a table, eating, when they were struck. When police arrived, the smell of alcohol was unmistakable. Bodycam footage later played in court showed Chidester slurring her words, admitting she had been drinking despite being on medication. Asked by an officer how intoxicated she felt on a scale of 0 to 10, she replied softly, "About a 7. In that same recording, she said she had passed out, claiming her neuropathy and heart condition caused the crash. The Monroe County Sheriff's Office charged her with 2 counts of second-degree murder and multiple counts of operating a vehicle while intoxicated, causing death and serious injury. Her defense attorney argued she'd had a medical episode, not a drunken lapse, but prosecutors presented compelling video evidence of her drinking earlier that day. The trial began in March 2025. It took jurors only 2 hours to find her guilty on all 9 counts. He sentenced Chidester to 25 to 50 years in prison, the maximum allowed for second-degree murder. In the packed courtroom, the victim's family wore shirts reading "Our Guardian Angels." The children's mother, Mariah Dodds, told the court through tears, "I wish Michigan had the death penalty. You are an evil, sick individual." Their father, Brian Phillips, said simply, "You took everything from us. I hope you never see daylight again." Chidester, trembling and pale, read a statement of apology. "I pray for those children every day. I never meant to hurt anyone." From this tragedy, 3 warnings echo clearly: never excuse drinking as stress relief, never underestimate the danger of mixing alcohol and medication, and never forget that "I'm fine to drive" has killed more families than fate ever could. Moments of negligence can rewrite entire lives, because one person's choice behind the wheel can become another's final memory. Number 8. Shuvonne Vinson. On a freezing New Year's night in Michigan, a custody battle turned into a massacre that would stun the nation before dawn. 42-year-old Shuvonne Vinson of Detroit had spent years fighting to regain custody of her 4-year-old daughter, a little girl placed with foster parents Jennifer and Jeffrey Bernhard in Northfield Township, Washtenaw County. But on the 1st of January 2025, Vinson stopped waiting for the courts to decide. Prosecutors say she brought her own kind of justice, and it came at the end of a gun. That evening, Vinson arrived at the Bernhards' home with 2 men, 37-year-old Gregory Calhan and 60-year-old Keith Finley. Calhan later told investigators Vinson had made her intentions clear: she was going to kill them. When they knocked, it was the Bernhards' foster child, Vinson's biological daughter, who unknowingly opened the door to her mother and the killers. Inside, Jeffrey heard his wife Jennifer scream. Moments later, the family's kitchen became a crime scene. Vinson, armed and enraged, pointed a gun and demanded money. She used Jeffrey's phone to make a $6,000 transfer to her own son's account. When Jeffrey pleaded for calm, she struck him across the face with the gun and opened fire. A bullet tore through his chest, another shattered his face. As he lay bleeding on the floor, he heard another gunshot, this one ending Jennifer's life. Across the room, Jennifer's 74-year-old father, Stevie Smith, was shot and stomped to death. When Jeffrey regained consciousness, his wife was slumped beside him, her head bleeding. The intruders were gone, along with his 9-year-old daughter and the 4-year-old foster child. The abduction, it turned out, was Vinson's motive all along. Police rushed to the home after Jeffrey staggered to a neighbor's house. Severely wounded, he told officers, "Shuvonne shot me, my wife's dead." Investigators quickly traced Vinson's phone to Ypsilanti Township, where deputies surrounded her grandmother's house. When confronted, Vinson gave a false name, resisted arrest, and was found with a loaded 9mm handgun under her arm, the same weapon later confirmed to have fired the fatal shots. Her accomplices were caught in a black Honda HR-V nearby, blood on their shoes, stolen jewelry and credit cards in the car, and one of the abducted children in the back seat. During her arraignment, Vinson cursed at the judge. In later hearings, she interrupted witnesses, mocked the survivor, and blew kisses to the gallery. Judge J. Cedric Simpson called the case sickening and praised Jeffrey's courage, saying his survival is only by God's grace. Vinson and her co-defendants now await trial, charged with 2 counts of murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy, crimes that could bring life in prison. 3 truths echo from this tragedy. Rage disguised as love can destroy lives, obsession can masquerade as justice, and every child's safety depends on the law, not revenge. In every custody fight, the line between love and control can blur, but when it breaks, only grief remains. Number 9. Wendy Lynn Wein. It began with a click, a digital impulse that would turn one woman's fantasy of revenge into a cautionary tale across the world. In July 2020, 51-year-old Wendy Lynn Wein of South Rockwood, Michigan, sat at her computer and searched for a hitman. What she found wasn't a shadowy corner of the dark web, but a parody site called Rent, a hitman.com, complete with fake testimonials and a promise of confidentiality under the imaginary Hitman Information Privacy and Protection Act of 1964. What Wein didn't know was that the site's creator, Bob Ennis, had turned it into a trap for people who genuinely sought to kill. Wein filled out the online form, naming her target, her ex-husband. She accused him of stealing from her and asked for help to handle the problem. In her message to the supposed consultant, she even joked that the site seemed weird for not being on the dark web. She submitted her full name, phone number, and location. Within hours, Ennis reported her to Michigan State Police. Posing as a professional assassin, an undercover trooper arranged to meet Wein in a parking lot in South Rockwood. There, she offered him $5,000 to kill her ex-husband, providing a detailed plan, his address, workplace, and schedule. She handed the trooper $200 in cash as a down payment for travel expenses. As soon as the money changed hands, officers moved in and arrested her. Investigators described the case as surreal. The foolishness of the suspect, trying to hire a hitman off the internet, was unbelievable, said Sergeant Michael Peterson of Michigan State Police. Ennis, who had forwarded the tip, later explained, "I give people a 24-hour cooling off period. If they still want to move forward, I call the cops." She did. He said Wein's case was one of over 130 prevented murders since the site began operating in 2005. At trial, prosecutors laid out a clear pattern of premeditation: the search, the messages, the meeting, and the payment. Wein pleaded guilty to solicitation to commit murder and illegal use of a computer to facilitate a crime. On the 13th of January 2022, Monroe Circuit Judge Daniel White sentenced her to 7 to 20 years in prison, calling the crime calculated and absurd. "Nobody could have believed this site was real," he said, "but you did. You didn't stumble on it, you went looking for it." Wein, pale and trembling, apologized in court. She told the judge she had lost 8 family members and was mentally broken, adding, "I hope others learn from my mistake." The bizarre nature of her case spread globally, turning Rent, a hitman.com into a symbol of digital age recklessness. It served as a reminder that the internet never forgets, and neither does justice. 3 warnings stand out: never let anger write your search history, never mistake online anonymity for safety, and never assume desperation excuses intent. Every keystroke leaves a trail, and sometimes that trail leads straight to prison. Number 10. Julie Boxley. It started with fire, one in a Michigan home, another in the mind of a woman whose past was already burning behind her. 52-year-old Julie Ann Boxley of Ishpeming, Michigan, now faces two separate sets of charges, one for the attempted murder of her ex-husband, and another for the death of her former employer, Glenn Andrews, a respected 72-year-old business owner. Prosecutors say her crimes share a common weapon, fire. The first incident occurred on Christmas Day 2021. James Boxley, her then husband, awoke to the sensation of cold liquid poured on him. He looked up to see Julie holding matches, one already lit. "I saw a small flame on me," he told police. "She said she hated me and kept lighting matches." James extinguished the fire and escaped unharmed. Julie was charged with assault with intent to murder and placed under investigation for arson. 15 months later, in the early hours of the 5th of March 2023, firefighters were called to 175 Silver Street, the home of Glenn Andrews, the owner of Glenn's Smokehouse, a well-known butcher shop in Ishpeming. Julie had been living there as a caretaker for Andrews' ill wife, who had since moved to a nursing facility. When the fire broke out, Andrews suffered severe burns before collapsing inside. He died of his injuries 2 weeks later. Boxley told investigators she awoke to Andrews yelling and escaped by jumping out of a window while he fled through the back door. But fire investigators found the evidence deeply troubling. A Michigan State Police fire inspector determined the blaze was human in origin, possibly starting in 2 locations, one near the front of the home, another closer to where Andrews was found. When asked how she escaped with minor injuries while Andrews burned, investigators said her story didn't match the scene. The judge presiding over her preliminary hearing said, "It's hard to understand how she came out unscathed, and he didn't." By November 2023, prosecutors filed charges of first-degree murder and first-degree arson. The defense argued there was no clear ignition source and pointed to Julie's severe mental health issues. Her attorney, Jennifer France, claimed Boxley suffered from severe psychiatric illness that impaired her judgment. Court delays followed. A competency evaluation declared her fit for trial, but in early 2025, defense appeals paused proceedings again. As of September 2025, she remains jailed without bond, facing life in prison if convicted. Glenn Andrews' death devastated the Ishpeming community. Neighbors described him as the heart of the town, and his daughter-in-law said, "I was completely beside myself." She lived with him. She was supposed to care for him. The family's grief deepened after learning they had once raised funds to help with his recovery, not knowing his alleged killer was the one by his side. From this tragedy emerged quiet lessons. Kindness must never blind caution. Mental illness demands vigilant oversight, and trust, once misplaced, can destroy more than one life. When fire consumes truth, what's left behind are ashes and unanswered questions that no verdict can extinguish. Evil doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, smiles, and signs your paycheck. These Michigan women proved that terror can wear perfume and carry car keys. Their stories aren't finished. They just moved to another headline, another courtroom, another shattered life. If you think you've seen the worst, you haven't. The next case will twist everything you thought you knew about guilt and grace. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, and step back into the dark with Justice Reversed, where every story cuts deeper and every truth demands to be found.